slightly different recording for this one. I'm not looking at planets or stars and whatnot at the moment because I've just been reading about Jimmy Savile. Safe to say I have avoided this for the last few days, last couple of weeks really. When it first came to light, I was gobsmacked that this had come to light after his death. It felt really unfair that he had no opportunity to defend himself at the time. I thought that was really quite poor. But anyway, since then, as I say, I have avoided it. I didn't watch the programme. I know it was on and a couple of people have spoken to me about it, so I have an idea of what was being talked about. I've slowly filtered my way through the news about it, reading back articles that were posted sort of a week ago and then it's coming sooner. And initially I'm gutted at my original reaction, that I was angry that he wasn't being given a right to defend himself. And that's quite difficult as a person who has suffered that in that way. Not by him, I hasten to add. Feeling that way, that an abuser deserves anything, is quite odd. They don't actually deserve any right to anything vaguely human, as far as I'm concerned. So I have to reconcile myself to this knowledge that this childhood symbol of wonderfulness, which he was to me, is nothing but a low-life, psychopathic, paedophilic scumbag, and that he has damaged so many lives purely for his own greed and purposes, with absolutely no thought to how anyone else would feel. And it obviously isn't just him. We know about Gary Glitter, we know about Jonathan King. I have reason to believe that there are a couple more out there. Even John Peel is now coming up as a bit of a question. And all of these people who were on television when I was young, back in the 80s, that they were big viewing to us kids. And I'm kind of thinking about it. I mean, looking back on hindsight, I never liked Gary Glitter anyway, so I'm not, and I never liked Jonathan King either. But Jimmy Savile was like, he was the fairy. He was the, I mean that in a nice way. No, I don't. He was the waving of a magic wand and making dreams come true. And I knew people who'd written to him. Don't think any of them ever actually met him, but I know people who wanted to see him and wanted to have their dreams made by him. And yet to get these dreams, he was using his position and power in the worst possible way. He was sexually abusing those young people. And the forces of the BBC and the power that he held kept those poor people from speaking out and getting the help they so rightly deserved. And I know it sent at least one to an early grave because she committed suicide. And I think the difficulty for me is how do you reconcile this huge chunk of your childhood to the knowledge that while you sat and watched him on television and he smiled and made his stupid noises, and he was doing that to those children, and he was abusing I mean, all children are there to be protected by us. And yet, he was abusing his position over ill children too. So, children recovering, or young people as well as children recovering from surgery, and or who had other disabilities that prevented them from looking after themselves. So not only was he abusing able-bodied and healthy children, he was abusing those who had nothing at all in any way to protect themselves. They couldn't do anything any more than the children could. But to go out of your way, to find people to abuse, to find a source for your abuse is just awful. I just can't. I can't quite fathom it. It really... I go out of my way to view art. That's my source. My source of entertainment is art. I love it. I'll see it anywhere and everywhere. I dream it. I think it. I sleep it. It's at the end of my fingertips. It's at the end of my tongue. I think, and everything about me is art. Whether it be art that my children have done, art that I've done, other people have done, my peers. I'll see something, I'll think of one of my peers, or I'll think of one of my children, or myself, and to think that anyone could put that much passion and energy into satisfying that sick perversion is just beyond me. And I did say that he was a psychopath because I don't believe he felt any remorse, because if he'd felt remorse he would have admitted what he'd done before he died and given those children, those adults, a chance to recover. Any paedophile, as far as I'm concerned, is a psychopath. Any paedophile who takes their secret to the grave, who twists their stories and lies to ensure that those victims, those children, don't get the help they need, is a psychopath. And it makes me so angry that these people walk our earth and that they have access to the very people that we are here to protect. It makes me so angry that the police have had their hands tied over Jimmy Savile. And other people too. It's not just the famous who get away with destroying children. It's everyday people get away with it. Because abusing children is like giving yourself a big green light. Because they're children. Because they're sweet and they don't understand. And corrupting a child is the ultimate of sins. And people who corrupt children are not valid human beings, as I would value a human being. They might look like you and me. They might sound like you and me, but they're not. Because anyone who can do that has no conscience. And it's our conscience and our humility that makes us human. Anyone who can go through their life destroying the lives of others for their own gains and greed is not human. And it sickens me that he and others like him walk our planet. And while I'm not a true believer of heaven and hell in the biblical way of looking at it, I do hope that there is a place somewhere where he rots for a very long time. And I don't just mean under the ground. I hope that whatever life he comes back to after he has served his time in the wherever it is that he is at the moment, I hope he suffers in the way that he has made the people in this life suffer. So there you have it. I have nothing pleasant to say. This isn't grounded, light-hearted energy. This is just sadness that these people are among us, and that our hands always seem to be tied because of the victims they choose. And if you sitting there can do anything to protect a child, then you should do it. It's not even a big or clever thing to do, it's the only right thing to do. Protecting our children is what it's all about. If you believe that there is a child out there being exposed to abuse of any kind, actually, not just sexual, but any sort of abuse, you owe it to them to do something to help and protect them. And I would, and do, and have, and I would again. There is no place on this earth for subhumans who do what they do to children.